Nova Station hung in the darkness like a misshapen star, its hodgepodge of salvaged modules and storage tanks reflecting the dim light of the distant sun. Located at the edge of human space, it served as the last refueling stop before ships ventured into the largely unexplored frontier zone. Catherine, Kit, Martinez stood at the station's main viewport, watching as a Centaurian merchant vessel detached from the fueling arm. "Pressure seals holding steady this time, Marco," she called out to her brother, who was monitoring the systems from his usual spot at the engineering console. The last thing they needed was another fuel leak eating into their already thin profit margins. "Clean disconnect," Marco replied, his fingers dancing across the holographic display. "Though I still say we need to replace that entire arm before it gives out completely." Kit sighed, running a hand through her close-cropped silver hair. At 45, she'd spent nearly half her life running Nova Station, having purchased it with her savings after retiring from the Colonial Defense Force. The station wasn't much, but it was home to a crew of 12 and a vital lifeline for independent traders and explorers. "Add it to the list," she said, turning to review the day's manifest. "How are we doing on supplies?" Before Marco could answer, the station's proximity sensors blared to life. Kit's military training kicked in as she rushed to the scanner display. "Unknown vessel approaching from Vector 73 Mark II. No matching registry in our database." The ship that emerged from the darkness was like nothing Kit had ever seen. Its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, with no visible seams or propulsion systems. It was massive, easily twice the size of the largest human cruiser, yet it had somehow avoided detection until it was nearly on top of them. "Heritage Protocol activated," announced Aria, the station's AI. "Unregistered vessel matches partial patterns from archaeological database. Estimated age, pre-Exodus era." Kit felt her breath catch. Pre-Exodus meant the ship predated humanity's emergence into interstellar space by at least 10,000 years. The vessel's surface rippled, and a communication request pinged their systems. "Marco, get me Lieutenant Commander Patel of Colonial Defense," Kit ordered, straightening her jacket. "And where the hell is Jackson? Our xenolinguist picks a hell of a time to be off shift." "He's helping Eva with that coolant leak in Module C," Marco replied, already establishing the secure channel to command. "Want me to call him up?" Before Kit could respond, the alien vessel transmitted again, this time in perfect standard English. "Station Control, this is the Wayfarer. We seek emergency docking. Our systems are failing, and we carry knowledge vital to the survival of all sapient species in this sector." The voice was melodious but clearly synthetic, likely an AI translation system. Kit exchanged glances with Marco, both thinking the same thing: their routine day at the galaxy's back end had just gotten a lot more interesting. "Wayfarer, this is Station Commander Martinez. We're a civilian facility with limited emergency response capabilities. The nearest military outpost is 3 days at best speed." "We understand, Commander." The reply came with a hint of what might have been desperation. "But we have no choice. The entity pursues us, and we cannot allow it to obtain what we carry. Your species' remarkable adaptability may be our last hope." Kit's tactical training screamed that this was potentially a first contact scenario with massive security implications. But her gut, the same instinct that had kept her alive through dozens of combat missions, told her something else: whatever was happening, it was bigger than protocols and procedures. "Marco, clear Dock 4 and begin emergency decontamination protocols. Alert medical to prepare for possible xenobiological contact, and get me every off-duty crew member up here now." She keyed the comm again. "Wayfarer, you're cleared for emergency docking. But be advised, any hostile action will result in immediate defensive measures." As the massive ship began its approach, Kit couldn't shake the feeling that Nova Station, this tiny outpost on the edge of nowhere, was about to become the center of something much larger than anyone was prepared for. The station's ancient recyclers hummed, and somewhere deep in the structure, a pressure valve released with a hiss, reminding her that out here, every breath was borrowed from the void. "Well, little brother," she said, watching the alien vessel's graceful approach, "looks like we might finally get some excitement out here after all." Marco snorted, his fingers never stopping their dance across the controls. "Yeah, because the Rigelian pirates last month weren't exciting enough for you." The Wayfarer's hull shimmered as it matched rotation with the station, and Kit allowed herself a small smile. After 20 years of watching ships come and go, she thought she'd seen everything the galaxy had to offer. She'd never been happier to be proven wrong. The docking procedure was unlike anything Kit had ever witnessed. Instead of extending standard connection ports, the Wayfarer's hull simply flowed outward, creating a perfect seal with Nova Station's aging dock. The station's structural integrity sensors registered the connection as stronger than their military-grade emergency locks. "Bio readings are complicated," reported Dr. Maya Patel, the station's chief medical officer, her dark eyes fixed on her scanner display. "I'm detecting multiple life signs, but they're fluctuating in ways that shouldn't be possible." Kit stood with her small emergency response team, Maya, Marco, and their security chief Li Wei, as the airlock cycled. The station's old decontamination systems hummed at maximum power, bathing the chamber in ultraviolet light. The inner door finally slid open to reveal three figures that seemed to be made of living crystal. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, their translucent bodies pulsing with internal light that shifted through colors Kit didn't even have names for. Where their faces should have been, complex geometric patterns swirled and reformed continuously. "We are the Prisma," the central figure announced, its voice resonating directly in their minds rather than through the air. "We apologize for any discomfort our true form may cause. We have been in station sleep for approximately 50,000 of your years." Li Wei's hand hadn't moved from his sidearm, but Kit could see the wonder in his eyes. 50,000 years. That predates human civilization. Correct. The Prisma's patterns shifted to deeper, more somber hues. "We are among the last survivors of what you would call the predecessor civilization. We have watched your species' emergence from afar, hoping we would never need to make contact. That luxury is no longer possible." Before Kit could respond, the station's alert system blared to life. "Multiple ships emerging from hyperspace," Arya announced. "Signatures match refugee vessels from the Arcturus colonies." Marco rushed to his console. 7, no, 12 ships. All broadcasting emergency signals. They're running dark except for distress beacons. Kit felt her stomach tighten. The Arcturus sector was home to some of humanity's most established colonies. "Put them through." The comm crackled with multiple overlapping voices, all edged with panic. Kit raised her hand for silence, then selected a single channel. "This is Nova Station. Please identify and state your emergency." "This is Captain Rodriguez of the passenger liner Star of Hope," came the response, the woman's voice tight with controlled fear. "We have over 2,000 colonists aboard. Something attacked the Arcturus colonies. Multiple settlements gone dark. We received warnings about some kind of wave that just erases everything it touches. Military ordered full evacuation, but communications went down before we got complete instructions." The Prisma's crystalline forms had grown darker, almost opaque. "It has already begun," the central figure stated. "The entity has awakened." Kit turned to their alien visitors. "What entity? What's happening to our colonies?" "We believed we had more time," the Prisma continued. "The entity is not a being as you understand it. It is a weapon, created by our civilization at the height of our hubris. A quantum-level consciousness designed to seek out and eliminate perceived threats to galactic stability. When it determined that we, its creators, had become such a threat, we were forced to flee, scattering our consciousness into these crystalline forms." Maya's scanner beeped insistently. "Commander, more ships incoming. These energy signatures, they're massive." The Prisma moved closer to the viewport, their crystalline bodies casting prismatic patterns across the station's walls. The entity used our own technology against us, turning our quantum gate network into a weapon. It can transform entire regions of space into what you might call a consciousness-negating field. Any sapient life caught within simply ceases to be. And now it's targeting humanity? Li Wei asked, his professional calm cracking slightly. Not specifically, the Prisma replied. But your species' rapid expansion and technological development has drawn its attention. The attack on your colonies is likely just the beginning. The entity will systematically eliminate any civilization it deems potentially destabilizing. More emergency signals flooded the station's communications array as additional refugee ships arrived. Kit could see the fear in her crew's faces, but years of military training kept her voice steady. You said you carried knowledge vital to survival. I'm assuming you have a way to stop this thing. The Prisma's patterns swirled into what might have been an expression of hope. Not to stop it directly, no. But we carry the key to something that might save both our peoples. Hidden in the quantum substrate of this sector is a network of emergency protocols we created, failsafes we never had time to implement. With human adaptability in our ancient knowledge, we might be able to repurpose the quantum gate network itself. To do what? Marco asked. To give consciousness itself a new frequency, the Prisma answered. To shift all sapient life in this sector just slightly out of phase with the entity's influence. But we will need your help. The process will require a level of improvisation and creative problem-solving that our crystalline forms are no longer capable of. Kit looked out at the growing cloud of refugee ships surrounding her station. Nova Station had always been a waypoint, a place for ships to refuel and move on. Now it might be the last hope for both humanity and a species so ancient they had watched Earth's first civilizations emerge. Well, she said, straightening her shoulders, we'd better get started. Because I have a feeling we're about to have company, and I don't think it's going to bother docking first. The station's sensors pinged again, detecting massive energy distortions at the edge of their range. Whatever was coming, they didn't have much time to prepare. But as Kit looked at her small crew, she saw not just fear in their eyes, but determination. Humans had faced extinction-level threats before, and they were still here. Sometimes the best solutions came from the most unlikely places, even a rundown refueling station at the edge of nowhere. Nova Station's docking bays were filled beyond capacity. Kit had ordered cargo containers emptied and repurposed as emergency shelter space, but with over 15,000 refugees now aboard a station designed for a few hundred, conditions were becoming desperate. Power grids at 97% capacity, Marco reported, his usual easy demeanor replaced by grim focus. We've shut down everything non-essential, but life support can't keep up with this many people indefinitely. In the station's hastily converted command center, Kit studied the holographic display showing the spread of the entity's influence. 3 more colonial systems had gone dark in the past 6 hours. The quantum negating field was expanding in a predictable pattern, but that didn't make it any less terrifying. The Prisma stood in the center of the room, their crystalline forms interfacing directly with the station's computers. Data streams flowed through their translucent bodies like rivers of light. We have located the nearest quantum gate node, the lead Prisma announced. It lies dormant within the asteroid field you call the Meridian Belt. That's less than 6 hours away at emergency thrust, Li Wei noted, marking the coordinates on his tactical display. But the entity's field will reach us before then. Not necessarily. Maya stepped forward, dark circles under her eyes from hours of analyzing the Prisma's biological data. I've been studying the quantum signatures from their crystalline forms. The entity's field operates on specific frequencies. If we can generate an opposing resonance, we might buy ourselves some time. The Prisma's patterns shifted to something approximating approval. Yes. Your understanding evolves quickly. We can modify your station's shield generators to create a temporary barrier, but it will require significant power. Which we don't have, Marco interjected. Not with all these refugees drawing on life support. Kit felt the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders. Every decision now meant lives, thousands of them. She turned to the main viewport, watching as another wave of refugee ships approached. Among them, she noticed something odd. Those mining vessels from Theta Company, she said, pointing to a cluster of heavy industrial ships. Their cores are designed to channel massive amounts of power for breaking down asteroids. The lead prisma's patterns swirled with sudden understanding. Yes. If we could synchronize multiple reactor cores, we could generate enough power for both the shield and life support, Marco finished, already running calculations. But those cores aren't designed to work together. The resonance patterns alone could tear the ships apart. Then we'll need to coordinate perfectly. Kit opened a channel to the mining vessels. This is Commander Martinez. I need to speak with your ranking officers immediately. We're about to attempt something incredibly stupid and complicated. Within minutes, the command center was crowded with ship captains and engineers. The plan was audacious. They would create a power-sharing network between 20 mining vessels, feeding their combined output through Nova Station's modified shields. The Prisma would use their crystalline forms to regulate the quantum frequencies, while human engineers would handle the more practical problems of keeping the whole thing from exploding. Even if this works, Li Wei pointed out, we're only buying time. We still need to reach that quantum gate. One problem at a time, Kit replied, though privately she shared his concern. They had yet to figure out how they would move 15,000 refugees through potentially hostile space. The station shuddered as the first mining vessel locked into position. Through the viewport, Kit watched as the other ships maneuvered into a complex geometric pattern, guided by the Prisma's calculations. It looked like some strange dance choreographed by a mathematician. First power link-up in 3 minutes, Marco announced. After that, we'll have 30 seconds to achieve synchronization before the feedback loops become critical. Maya's medical team had set up emergency triage centers throughout the station, preparing for casualties if the plan failed. The refugees had been moved to the most protected areas, but in space, nowhere was truly safe. The Prisma's crystalline forms began to pulse with increasing intensity. We are detecting quantum disturbances at the edge of your sensor range. The entity approaches. Kit took a deep breath, remembering her old flight instructor's words, in space, panic is a luxury you can't afford. She opened a channel to all ships. This is Commander Martinez. Power synchronization begins in 2 minutes. All non-essential systems shut down now. Emergency teams to your stations. And everyone, remember to breathe. The first mining vessel's core began to hum, a deep vibration that resonated through the station structure. One by one, the others joined in, each adding its voice to the growing chorus of power. The Prisma's forms blazed with internal light as they worked to channel and control the enormous energies being generated. Synchronization at 40%, Marco called out. 60, 70. Warning alerts flashed across multiple screens as power levels exceeded their designed safety limits. Kit could feel the station groaning around them, stressed by forces it was never meant to handle. Entity field detected at extreme range, Arya announced. Estimated time to contact, 15 minutes. The Prisma's voices joined in harmony, resonating through both air and mind. The quantum barrier is forming. But we require more power. Kit keyed her comm again. All ships, emergency power now. Give us everything you've got. The lights flickered and dimmed throughout the station as every available scrap of energy was diverted to the shield generators. In the darkness, the Prisma shone like captured stars, their light reflecting off the faces of humans working desperately to save not just their own species, but perhaps all sapient life in this sector of space. Synchronization at 95%, Marco reported. Shield harmonics stabilizing. Through the viewport, Kit watched as a shimmer began to spread outward from the station, not the usual blue bubble of a standard shield, but something that seemed to bend space itself, creating ripples in the very fabric of reality. The entity's quantum negating field was visible now, a wave of absolute darkness that consumed light itself. As it approached their position, Kit found herself holding her breath. Everything depended on the next few moments. "Here we go," she whispered. "Let's show this thing what happens and it picks a fight with both humanity and the Prisma." The quantum shield held, but barely. Where the entity's field met their barrier, reality itself seemed to shudder. Through the viewport, Kit watched as waves of distortion rippled across their makeshift defense, like oil spreading across water. "Shield harmonics are stable," Marco reported, his voice tight with concentration. "But the mining vessel's cores are running hot. We've got maybe 2 hours before critical failure." The lead prisma's crystalline form pulsed with urgent patterns. "We must reach the quantum gate while the shield holds. Commander Martinez, your species has proven its worth beyond our expectations. But now we must ask even more of you." Kit nodded grimly. "You want to move the entire station?" "Yes. Nova Station's structure can serve as a carrier for the quantum frequency modulators we require. We cannot abandon the refugees, and we cannot separate the power network we have created." Li Wei stepped forward, his tactical display showing their proposed route through the Meridian Belt. "The asteroids will provide some cover, but moving something this size through that field will be nearly impossible," Kit finished. "Which means we're definitely going to try it." She turned to Maya. "How are our guests holding up?" The doctor consulted her medical tablet. "Scared, but managing. We've got volunteers from 6 different species helping with medical care and crowd control. Turns out there's nothing like an extinction-level threat to encourage cooperation." Kit allowed herself a small smile at that. The station had become a microcosm of galactic civilization, with humans working alongside Centaurians, Rigelians, and even a group of nomadic veil dancers whose crystalline biology had made them unexpectedly useful in helping interpret the Prisma's technology. "Marco, begin power transfer to the maneuvering thrusters. Li Wei, I want our best pilots on emergency shuttles, ready to help guide us through the belt. Maya, get everyone strapped in. This ride's going to get bumpy." The station groaned as its ancient engines, designed only for minor orbital adjustments, began to power up. The mining vessels adjusted their formation, maintaining the delicate power network while preparing to help push the massive structure. "Entity field is adapting," one of the Prisma warned. "It seeks patterns in our shield harmonics." Kit watched as dark tendrils probed their barrier, testing for weaknesses. "Can we modify the frequencies?" "Yes, but each change requires massive energy expenditure. We must move quickly." The first asteroids loomed ahead as Nova Station began its unprecedented journey. Kit had navigated plenty of dangerous situations in her military career, but nothing quite like piloting a civilian station through a debris field while being pursued by an ancient doomsday weapon. "Multiple contacts," Li Wei called out. "Energy signatures matching colonial defense vessels." A familiar voice crackled over the calm Nova Station. "This is Admiral Chen of the Third Fleet. We've been following the refugee signals. Looks like you could use some help." Kit had never been so happy to hear from her old commanding officer. "Admiral, your timing is impeccable. We've got civilians aboard and a plan that's crazy enough to work, but we need to reach the Meridian Belt's core." "Understood, Commander. We'll run interference. The entity's field seems to have more trouble tracking multiple small targets. We'll give it something to chase." The massive forms of colonial defense destroyers emerged from FTL, immediately breaking into attack formations. They began launching clouds of autonomous drones, creating a complex web of movement that seemed to confuse the entity's targeting. "Approaching first major asteroid cluster," Marco announced. Mining vessels adjusting formation for maximum thrust. Kit felt sweat running down her back as she coordinated the station's movement through the field. The Prisma had integrated themselves into the navigation systems, their quantum-level awareness helping predict debris paths, but human intuition was still needed for split-second decisions. A massive asteroid tumbled past, close enough that Kit could see the ancient impact craters on its surface. The station's structural integrity alert screamed as their shield brushed against smaller rocks, the quantum barrier atomizing them on contact. Power network at 70%, Marco warned. Core temperatures reaching critical in 3 mining vessels. Reroute through secondary containment, Kit ordered. And get me a direct line to those ship's engineers. Before she could say more, the entity's field surged forward, its darkness consuming 2 colonial defense drones. The barrier between it and Nova Station flickered ominously. Shield failure imminent, the Prisma announced. The entity has begun to predict our frequency variations. Kit's mind raced. They were still at least 20 minutes from the quantum gate's location, and their defenses were failing. They needed something unpredictable, something that would confuse the entity's pattern recognition just long enough. The asteroids, she said suddenly. Marco, those mining vessels aren't just power plants, they're equipped with asteroid-breaking charges, aren't they? Her brother's eyes widened with understanding. The electromagnetic pulses from multiple simultaneous detonations would create quantum noise, the Prisma finished, their patterns shifting rapidly. Yes. Random interference patterns could temporarily disrupt the entity's calculations. Admiral Chen, Kit called over the comm, we're about to do something extremely reckless. I suggest your ships pull back to minimum safe distance. She could almost hear the smile in her old commander's voice. Just like old times, Martinez. Third Fleet, falling back to support positions. Kit took a deep breath, looking at the faces of her crew, human and alien alike, all united in this desperate gamble. Well, ladies, gentlemen, and energy beings, let's make some noise. The electromagnetic pulses from the detonated asteroids created a dazzling display, like a new constellation being born and dying in seconds. The entity's field recoiled from the chaos of energy, its perfectly ordered patterns disrupted by the random quantum noise. Shield harmonic stabilizing, Marco called out. The entity's pulling back, recalculating its approach vectors. Kit didn't waste the opportunity. All ships, maximum thrust. Everything you've got left. Nova Station surged forward, its ancient frame protesting as the combined power of 20 mining vessels pushed it deeper into the Meridian Belt. The Colonial Defense Fleet maintained their screening position, their drones creating complex patterns to further confuse the entity's targeting systems. We're detecting strong quantum resonance ahead, the Prisma announced, their crystalline forms vibrating with increasing intensity. The gate node is active. Through the viewport, Kit saw it, a massive structure embedded in a planetoid, its surface marked with geometric patterns that matched those flowing through the Prisma's bodies. It had to be at least as old as their visitors, yet it hummed with power that their sensors could barely comprehend. Multiple hull breaches on Deck C through F, Arya reported. Emergency containment holding. Life support at critical levels in refugee sections. Maya's voice came through the comm, background noise suggesting barely contained chaos in the medical bay. We've got wounded from the structural damage, but the veiled dancers are helping stabilize the worst cases. Their crystalline resonance is somehow strengthening our emergency force fields. Entity field approaching from multiple vectors, Li Wei warned. It's learned from the asteroid detonations. Adapting its approach. The Prisma's patterns became urgent. We must initiate the quantum frequency shift now, before the entity can fully adapt. But what? Kit demanded, knowing she wouldn't like the answer.